Melody, can you hear me okay? This is Commissioner Hanson.
Yes.
Awesome. I'd like to welcome everybody out to the Planning Commission this evening. I'm Commissioner Hanson. I'm the current chair of the commission. This is the meeting for January 4th, 2023. How many people is it their first meeting today? Yeah, Drew. All right. Okay, awesome. I'm always curious. What we'll do this evening to start, we'll have an invocation by Commissioner Mitchell, and we'll follow that with a leading of the Pledge of Allegiance by Commissioner Tupou.
Our dear Heavenly Father, we're grateful to gather this day, this evening for this meeting. We pray that Thou would be with each of us, that we'll be able to accomplish what we need to in an orderly fashion. We're grateful for the opportunity we have to live in Washington City. We're so grateful for all those who serve and contribute to making it such a great place to live. And we pray that Thou would continue to bless those who serve our community. And we thank Thee in this, we pray and do so in the name of Jesus Christ. Amen.
Amen.
All rise.
Allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thanks, Commissioners. The first item on the agenda this evening is to approve the agenda as outlined. If there's any changes that you'd like to request or need to be made, please indicate at this time. Otherwise, I'll look for a motion to approve the agenda as set.
Commissioner Tupou, I make a motion to approve the agenda for January 4th, 2023.
This is Commissioner Bullock. I'll second.
Got a first and a second. All in favor? Aye. Okay. Any opposed? The agenda is approved as outlined. Second item, I'll look for an approval of the minutes from our meeting December 21st, 2022. We've all received that in our packets. If there's any changes, please let us know at this time. Otherwise, I'll look for a motion to approve those minutes as well. Are there possible changes that we're thinking here?
This is Sheil. I would move that we approve the minutes from, are we good? Okay. Approve the minutes from December 21st and move forward.
Commissioner Anderson, I second.
We've got a first and a second. All in favor? Aye. Any opposed? Yeah, Sheila, you were just making me sweat a little bit. If we're having this much trouble on the second approval of the minutes, we're in trouble this evening, everybody. Buckle up, I guess. Item number 3.
Do you want me to approve the next one?
Yeah. Item number 3, this is a chance for declaration of abstentions or any conflicts that any of the commissioners have with any of the agenda items this evening. I do not have any. Anybody have anything?
I have one on the conditional use permit 5A. I'm actually in the process of bidding that project, and Boyd Martin Construction is one of my customers, so I will sit this one out.
Okay. Is it okay if he stays up here on the stand?
As a Commissioner Bullock, just for further clarification, are you going to abstain from discussion and voting or just voting?
Both.
I only ask so it's clear with the commission so they know what to expect.
So the abstention from both, is he able to stay up here on the stand, or?
Yeah, he's only legally obligated to not vote on it. And so some folks want to be part of the discussion but then not vote. I prefer Commissioner Bullock's approach is if you're going to abstain, just abstain from both discussion and voting. I think it's cleanest.
So, sorry, as the alternate, how does that affect me? Does that then make
You
me
vote.
Okay.
All right, thanks, Pete. Anybody else have any reason to abstain from anything else on the agenda? No? Okay. Item number 4A, this is a preliminary plat. It's a public hearing for consideration and recommendation to the city council for Sandy Creek subdivision located approximately 222 west, 840 south. The applicant is Bush and Gudgel, and I'll turn the time over to Eldon for the report.
Thank you, Commissioners. Happy New Year. This item was tabled during the December 21st, 2022 Planning Commission to allow time for a few minor changes to be made to the preliminary plat. The applicant is ready to move forward at this time. The applicant is requesting approval of the preliminary plat for Sandy Creek subdivision. This particular subdivision is proposing 34 lots on an area covering 16.04 acres. The zoning designation at this location was recently rezoned to single-family residential R18 and the RA half zoning designations. The surrounding zoning is residential agriculture 2 acre to the north, residential agriculture 1 acre to the east, industrial I-1 to the south, and St. George city limits to the west, which is designated as manufacturing zoning, the M1, with a general plan of medium density residential. The proposed subdivision conforms to the approved zoning. The request meets the subdivision requirements and other city ordinances as it relates to this location. Staff has reviewed the request and recommends approval with conditions of the preliminary plat as outlined. Staff recommends that the Planning Commission recommend approval of the preliminary plat for the Sandy Creek subdivision onto the City Council based on the following findings and subject to the following conditions as seen in your report. And I'm happy to answer any questions at this time.
Thanks, Eldon. Commissioners, the floor is yours.
Eldon, this is Commissioner Anderson. On these lots 1 through, whatever this is, 1 through 6. So it looks like they're all gonna be pad graded except for those lots. What's the intention of leaving those not pad graded?
What kind of grading?
It says no grading. Do we know?
Yeah, they'll be doing a walkout basement to match.
No. Maybe we should ask the engineer or the developer, either one.
Austin Anderson, I'm the developer.
Austin, can you say that again, please? one more time?
Austin Anderson, developer. They're large estate lots, and we don't want to put all the over X onto them lots right off the bat.
Okay.
So that's the reason.
What's the grade on there? How much does it? Doesn't look like it drops very much.
A couple feet
Just a
from
few.
front to back, yeah.
Okay.
Austin, we'll come back to you. Thank you for stepping up. What I'll do at this time, Commissioners, I'm going to open the floor. This is a public hearing. If there's anybody here in the chamber that would like to speak to this item, please come forward and do so at this time. I'll go ahead and close the public hearing, and I'll turn the time back over to you, Commissioners, if you have any additional questions for the developer or staff or applicant on this item. Don't all jump at once. What are we thinking? Thoughts? Motion? Anything? I'm happy to wait if you think you might have some questions. Otherwise, let's.
This is Commissioner Anderson. I do have a question for
for Rick, I guess, probably. So with, again, with these lots, these estate lots, 1 through 6, how are they gonna handle drainage? Because I know you got the detention basin down at the bottom of lot 1, but if they're not gonna be graded, how's that gonna be handled in the future as you
Maybe what we
move
do is
through
put
lots?
a drainage swell on the back of the lots that just goes in the detention pond or something like that, but yeah, it's a good
I just think there
question.
needs to be something just so
Yeah, cause it will be lower in
you
the
don't start
back
building
than
up a
the-
bunch of them, then you're like, now what do we do?
So it'll be either like a drainage swell or, you'll put some backyard drains or something that go in the detention pond, so either one of those, I think would be.
So I think, I mean, unless you want to do sump pumps or whatever, you at least have to have a swell or an easement or somehow to get over to the detention basin. Just because, like, let's say you build a house on lot 1 or 2 or whatever, and then somebody up on lot 5 or 6 can't connect to the detention basin unless you got some means, whether it's an
Right.
easement or a swell or something, or just a drain in the back. I don't know.
And I would recommend when you come for your final plat, Rick, just keep this in the back of your mind or make a note that if that's your case, then I think you need to put an easement all along there. So just so we have it.
Okay.
And I'd rather see pipes instead of swells because people that live in it, sometimes, first owners sometimes know that. Second or third ones, I don't like that landscape or whatever they did. And so a pipe is the better way to go, just for that. But yeah, just on the final plat, make sure we note that. But if you can't put in a pipe,
You don't
we
fill
would
in the pipes, huh?
well, they do, but it's still, sometimes they wonder why this drain's there. At least they see a drain and at least, but when they just see a swell, sometimes just think, oh, I don't like the way they landscaped back there. That's how they generally do, and they wipe them out. So
Yeah, ready for a motion.
This is Commissioner Anderson. I'll make a motion to approve the preliminary plat for the Sandy Creek subdivision located 222 west, 840 south, with the 2 findings and 13 conditions outlined by staff. And I'll add a 14th condition that the drainage access to the detention basin be addressed on lots 1 through 6 and send it to City Council for consideration.
This Commissioner Tupou, I second that.
I've got a motion by Commissioner Anderson. I've got a second by Commissioner Tupou. Individual voting: Shield.
Aye.
Bullock.
Aye.
Tupou.
Aye.
Anderson.
Aye.
I'm Hanson. I'm an aye as well. That motion passes. We'll send to City Council with our recommendation for approval. Thanks, gentlemen. Item number 5A. This is a public hearing and consideration to approve a conditional use permit for a proposed auto dealership, C-22-19, located approximately at the northwest area of Washington Parkway and North Commerce Boulevard. The applicant is Boyd Martin Construction. And I'll turn the time over to staff for their report.
thank you. Applicants request and approval of the conditional use permit to develop this new car dealership. The applicant is wishing to develop approximately 4.0 acres into a new car dealership for the Finley Hyundai Group. It is being proposed that the building is approximately 32,300 square feet in size, consisting of 2 stories, containing office space and service bay on the bottom level, and then office space on that second level. So the bottom floor will be roughly 27,750 square feet, with that upstairs area being 4,550 square feet. The building height will be 24 feet to the top of the exterior walls, with an additional 4 to 5 feet of mechanical equipment area, which will have to be screened as per our code, and the suitable finish will have to accent the finishes on the exterior. This height of 24 feet is well within the commercial building regulations, which is actually 45 foot in its maximum. So they're really good there. The conditional use is being sought due to the requirements found in the PCD zoning, stating CUP approval from the Planning Commission must be obtained for automobile sales agencies. Staff has reviewed the proposed project, finds that It meets the intent of the PCD zoning regulations, and also proposed project as well is a very well-designed building and layout, and will be an asset to the city at this particular location. Again, this will be seen from the freeway up in that new exit 13 area. I guess it's not new, it's just finally being developed. So with that said, staff would like to recommend that the Planning Commission approve C-22-19, allowing for a new motor vehicle sales agency to be located at this particular location at approximately the Parkway and North Commerce Boulevard, as seen in your exhibits, with the following findings and conditions. So they're pretty much standard for a lot of the commercial developments we do, and I'll be more than glad to answer any questions that the commissioners have for this CUP proposal. I will go through, if it helps, we might as well zoom through the exhibits, let everybody here kind of see. Here's kind of the elevations of the building. Pull up the one that's going to be this one right here with my arrow circling around is basically the street view it's on a bend. And then right off to it, around the corner of it is, again, the entrance to the building, which kind of faces the cars in the lot. But again, it's on an angle, so this will be the glass storefront area. And then this will be in the back on the other side, and then this bottom one is the rear that faces the freeway. So here's some pictures of, you can kind of see that finish. Sometimes the drawings don't do, but this is actual pictures of one of their sites, I think in Vegas. And this is what that finished product, that scaling finish looks like up here by the Hyundai, if you see the arrow I'm pointing at. And then the showroom will be pretty much almost matching, I think, other buildings they've done. Finishes on the inside. And then these are just exhibits stating all the finishes, what they'll be. It's mostly stucco and variations of that, different kinds of colors and finishes of stucco that you'll see on the building. So again, it was good to have this picture here. You kind of see what the storefront and everything will be, and then it'll just be stucco finishes with different color variations on the other three sides. Again, more of that same product. I want to just get zoomed down a little bit and let's see, I think this is the one, hopefully when it catches up here.
So is this parcel furthest to the south on that development?
No, this is actually kind of in the middle. I'll bring up the aerial here in a second, kind of show you where this one falls in line. Wanted to. Again, here's a rendition of the particular finish that you'll see with that dealership with the bays out on that street frontage side. That's where the people come in and drop their vehicles off, and they'll go in for the service. Just kind of wanted to zoom in on here. This kind of shows you kind of how the building layout will be. The car wash back in the back on this end of the building. Again, those bays I showed you just a while ago down here. Of course, the showroom. And then the service department is along this whole back area. And of course, there's offices and the stairs that go up to more executive offices upstairs. Again, just kind of showing you with vehicles in them, how to be laid out. Just wanted to try to find the landscape. Well, that might be it. I think the other ones. But I've gone through the landscape. I basically put the note they'll just need to adhere to our new water conservation landscaping. So we'll probably see a lot of more drought tolerant shrubbery and rock mulches, etc., things to that effect. So one of the conditions is they got to bring that in before they put it in anyway, and we'd look over that final plan. It's hard to ask somebody to come with a landscape architect design at this point until they get the building up and everything. Then they kind of get to the building and all that ready, and they'll come and then go with those colors and finishes to the surrounding area and stuff. So they'll be required to bring that in before they finish that up. So. So let me go to, just to answer that question for you, Chairman, will pull this over and, whoa, might have been a little, either you go way too far or not far enough. Anyway, the best way, sorry, I do not like the setup here. It's not like my one in my office. But if you know where the big sign is right now, which you can see right here, this curved lot with my arrow, that's where the dealership is going, this first one. And all of this area is kind of designated. These will all be dealerships with the Washington Auto Mall. I don't think it's called Washington Mall, maybe it is, but this particular one is on this bend right here.
Is this one going to replace the one that's currently in St. George?
This sign will be moved.
I mean the dealership.
Well, I hope I'm not speaking. Is there a representative here from Finlay?
They'll have both?
Well, I kind of, back me up if I'm wrong, but I kind of understood this will be new cars, and I think they're going to, the other one will end up being a lot more of the used car place, but they are going to keep it. They're not discontinuing that. I do know that. So it'll be more of a used car lot down there from what I've heard.
Rusty Hughes from Economic Development, Washington City. So they have, this was part of they have 15 brands that they've invited, one of them being the Genesis brand. So this was one of the Finlay, getting Finlay in there. You wouldn't always think high tech, high end with Finlay, but it's a one step to getting the Genesis brand, which is their. No, this is Finlay, but they purchased another lot. So the idea is, and that deal hasn't been done. What the way the deal is structured is they have a development agreement with Sitla. They have 15 brands, high-end brands that they've invited, and you can see them on their website if you want more information about it. But unless they have an adjustment to their development agreement with Sitla, the landholder, then they are restricted to those brands in this auto mall. So we would expect for the dealerships to come in under that list.
That's one of the things we were also wondering up here, and it's no disrespect to Hyundai, but when we saw the list of Bentley, Ferrari, Aston Martin, I mean, we don't see those anywhere. And then I think the city has seen that, and that's the mindset of the city. And the first one we pop up is a Hyundai. Like, how do we come to grips with that? I mean, I guess what you said is fine, but seems a little bit, we're going to get a lot of questions about that.
Sure.
The Genesis brand is, I mean, I understand Genesis, I get it, it's good, but yeah, interesting. Anyway, all right.
So these will specialize in their high tech lines and move in that direction is what they've told us.
Okay.
Has to be cars that will sell.
Yeah.
Just for the commissioners to know, that Merritt Way you see right now, it's torn up and gone because they're reconfiguring that road. So there will be another roundabout in somewhere right around in here where that Merritt Way is now, and there will be a different kind of design on that road to help accommodate for these lines. It's going to be more of a boulevard type of a finish, with lanes on each side of a planter strip, just to kind of enhance the area. So in case you've been out there wondering, that road, I think it is torn up and gone, isn't it, John? So that's why it's happening, because it's being moved.
Is the city comfortable with when we talked about this, I don't know, whatever meetings ago, we talked about the availability or where the trucks are going to turn around to offload and load. And are we comfortable with where that is in relation to this particular one being built? Does it matter at this point, or?
I guess that's a good question, because we were given that this area over here is going to be that where everything's brought in on the semis, everything's taken off of the trucks in this unload and load area. So I don't know where they're at in that particular case. We can probably ask that question here when we start getting plans of what the plan is on that. So this would be good to know that.
So that was ultimately what the city decided, is to offload down there for all of them? They just drive to whatever dealership they're going to? So all the dealerships will offload down there?
All of them. Yeah, it's going to be a CC&R. From what I understand, that this will be the designated storage, loading and unloading area for all dealerships. They won't be allowed.
Is that road a 4-lane road? with
No, and that was the discussion about getting semis in and out. And so they have amended or fixed their plat a little bit to accommodate for that. So they have told us that they've been worked with their engineer that'll be the case. So,
Oh, it
because
will be
well, the road will be big enough. It's just that they'll need a place to turn around.
Right.
And so that's where this will be, come in is that, but we need to be able to allow them to turn into that as easy as possible as well. So thank goodness transport trucks aren't as big, I think, as regular semis. I mean, I hate to say it, but they're close. They're a little bit smaller, aren't they? Or are they bigger? Same size? They just don't, I guess,
Gotta be
look at.
about the same.
I don't know.
They just move a lot smoother for whatever reason it is. So
So there will be landscape strips and the rest of the roads up there, though, that prevent people from parking in the middle and all that we talked about initially, right? Okay.
yeah.
All right.
And they'll design their driveways around because we'll have some openings, of course, in those landscape areas for driveway, left-hand turns in and stuff. So, and we'll see all that as that kind of works its way out. In fact, they may wait to put the medians in until after we get the dealers to know where they want their driveways and match them up better. And it'll be a work in progress. I hate to say that, but that's about the best we can do under the circumstances. So,
Sounds like there's a plan. That's important to me, so. Commissioners, any other questions for staff before we open this up to a public hearing?
So there's actually landscape drawings in our packet.
that's good because it's so blurry when I'm scrolling through here. I know I probably zipped right by it, so.
All right, I'm going to go ahead and open this up to a public hearing. If there's anybody here in the chamber that would like to speak to this item at this time, please come forward and state your name for the record.
Greg McCombs. I would just request that the commission consider having the roundabout on Washington Parkway completed before the car dealership goes in. And lastly, is there going to be any washing of cars on the lot itself or just in the car wash? And are they going to be using reclaimed water?
Greg, we'll try to get you some answers. I don't know them, but yeah, we'll try to get them.
Since there's so much concrete, or there's going to be so much pavement there, and with all the other dealerships, I wonder if the city should consider using the reflective asphalt coating, since people ride their bikes up, what is it? I don't know the name of the road once it curves around.
Okay.
Because people that run and ride bikes up there, and that's going to be a very hot area during the summer. Just a suggestion.
This is off the parkway, if that's what you're wondering. It's not on the main road.
No, but people ride their bikes up that adjacent street and around the corner to the parkway, and either back down or they go on up Washington Parkway.
Commissioners, it's a really interesting comment because the car washing was mentioned and it is a service that'll be available to this dealer, but it's not technically a part of this application. But I do think it's really good feedback. I'm going to recommend that the city take that home and use that as we interact with the developer's application for the car wash portion, that we talk with them about what water they're wanting to do. We already have an ordinance that sets a standard for car washes. And this is an interesting one because it's not a for hire car wash, but it kind of is, because I think they're going to be charging the dealers for a car wash, right? And so we'll make sure that we try to take the current standard, apply it to them. The current standard basically says you've got to reuse it unless you're efficient to a certain standard. So thank you for the comments. I don't see where we can enforce those against this application because they don't have a car wash on site. But we'll consider that as we go through the process with the developer.
With regards to John, maybe you can speak to that with regards to the roads, bikes, anything like that. Are we planning on any consideration for that, or is it just gonna be a standard city street with a bike lane, or? I wouldn't say I'm the best at reading this stuff, so maybe you should, or can, explain it.
Yeah, the main road through, it has, landscaping on either side of the street behind the curb. And then the island down the center also has landscaping. There is, I believe there is, it's been a little bit since I looked at the plans, but I believe there are, bike lanes on the exterior side of it, so.
It'll be consistent, I would think, with what's down in front of Maverick and everything, right?
Yeah.
And if I'm not, do you ride your bike down there by chance, or by Maverick?
I walk.
You walk? Do you know if there's a bike lane there? I believe there is. Okay, so I would expect it to be consistent then, is that fair
Yeah.
to say?
Yep.
Okay,
And they'll have, you know, I think they've got 5 or 6 foot sidewalks back behind curb and all their landscaping
Yeah.
stuff to make it really, really nice in and through that area, so.
there's no reason to think otherwise then, right? The city would keep it consistent, there's not a reason not to for, okay.
Yeah, and I was also referring to the lot itself. There's so much asphalt. There's gonna be so much asphalt in that area from the car dealerships. If they maybe want to consider putting a reflective sealant on top of the asphalt so it reflects the heat up, it doesn't absorb so much heat. They do that quite a bit down in Arizona.
Yeah, it's
Is
nothing
that-
that we have in our requirements at this time. but
It's not something
definitely
we have?
something that they could take a look at, so.
All right, it's been noted for the record, thanks, past the city council. I wonder if, because this is the first, is this our?
Can I fix my comments a little bit? I said there's not a car wash on this one, and there is. And so I'm gonna take it to staff. We'll talk it through. This is a service center to a dealer transaction. It probably depends. The legal reality is going to depend who owns what, but it doesn't appear to be the same thing as a retail car wash. But staff-wise, I think we need to talk through the standard there and what we're going to impose upon them. And we appreciate your comments to help us get there. We hadn't got that far yet talking about car washes, and now we will.
It sounds like maybe a reflective, that seems like something maybe all big auto malls might have in hot areas, is some sort of reflective material to be considered as well.
Yeah, I do think there's a reality that any car sales use a lot of car wash water. And so our car wash ordinance only applies to new businesses that do retail car washing. But again, it's a car wash use, and we need to decide whether the city and the council want to apply that same standard to this use.
All right. Thanks, Greg. Anybody else want to speak to this item tonight? Okay, I'll go ahead and close the public hearing. I'll open the floor back up to commissioners for any additional questions or comments that you might have for staff. Or
Yeah, this is Sheil. I wanted to, are we concerned about having the common area completed the same time this is completed?
A common area.
Common areas where they're unloading? Sorry. Made us think.
Drew looks like he's in thought or he's not going to answer. Who are you asking, Drew? Maybe?
I'm asking anybody.
I mean, I could sit and debate this question both ways, you know, I mean, and
I
it's like we
agree.
talked about, because they are the first one coming in. You know, I'm not as, I'd probably get very concerned after about if there's 7 or 8 of them, when we hit 3, 4, and 5. Absolutely, you know, because then we're over that halfway point.
I just want assurance that it's really coming. You know, I guess it's really coming, but
Well, or, you know, if you.
it just
yeah.
seems a little odd because I've never seen one of these common areas in an auto mall.
I have, they work real well.
Okay.
You know, and I know that's probably where they've picked it up from. I've seen 2 of them, you know, in my experiences, you know, in my job. And so just in some cities where they've had them, and they work very well.
Yeah.
So, and all the dealers are actually glad to have them because they can put more product on their parking lots that they have to worry about everything. So it does come in handy, and it works real well when they use it right. So But I don't know that, you're the commissioners. Probably me on my side down here, I'm probably okay with not, but, put them on notice, that we can, at least the developer, hey, when, don't wait till number 4 and 5. Let's think about it at 2 or 2,
I agree with 2
between
or 3.
now and your next one,
Right.
but no later than number 3, get that taken care of. So
How, I agree with that. How would we address that then? What's your opinion or suggestion on how we would address that? Just letting council know that's noted, take it back.
council won't have anything to do with this.
Nothing.
It's conditional use permit.
But then it's
So-
not, I don't know how to say this right, but it's not logistically right dependent on the first one, right? I mean,
Right.
it's
Be-
not.
because
we'll
right
have to
now,
address
with
that down the
only
road.
one dealership in and the new road that they're going to be building, I think we're okay with if they, for a short time unload some cars and get them off. But we don't want that happening after number 2. So but I'd rather them start thinking about it now between number 1 and 2, coming in and getting it addressed when they build that road, and because they'll have all the equipment there for that, right? And that's the best time to do it to save money, is do it while you're doing something else.
And this, just to
So-
clarify for myself, this is one developer doing the entire thing?
Well, it's one developer doing all, but they're all different dealerships.
That's fine, but it would be
Yeah.
on that one developer is what I'm suggesting.
Well, they're the ones who are selling the properties. Okay, they're the ones bringing in and bringing in the other dealerships. So in essence, it is, even though they're not owning all. There's not one developer owning all the car dealerships. They're just selling the lots. So almost like any other developer would do on homes or whatever, they'll all be individual lots, individual separate dealers.
So ideally then, that it would be realistic, well, financially it's not realistic, but to have the developer do that before any of them go in.
Well,
I think you could say after the third one. Why the third one or whatever it should go in.
Because I think there's room around there. It's like, that's why I feel I don't want to, hold, especially when we want these car dealerships to come.
Yeah.
We don't want to put any sticks, but we want it well known out there that, hey, you guys better start thinking about that now because of this, because we want to get as many dealerships to come in as soon as possible. So
agree with that.
Do we just pick a number like 3 because I think we should put something?
I think we look at it probably after 3, because for a project like this to pan out, they've got to get as many, customers as they can on these lots, or it's just going to die. And so initially that's what the developer is going to need, is the leeway to do that. But once it becomes a parking issue, or then let's say after 3 or whatever, then he puts it in. And by that time he's got a little bit, he's got sold some lots, he's had a few customers and so forth.
Well, he's collected a little bit of money to do
Yeah.
that.
Do we know the total number of lots when this is completed?
I
Top of
can't
our heads.
remember. John or Eldon, do you remember how many? I think there's close to 13, is it?
13? So
12 or 13.
13 is 3 a good number to stop at, or?
What do you think, Drew? How many dealerships is
It's too
sufficient
many.
until parking becomes an issue? Like, when does that sort of become
Right.
an issue?
Well, that's what I say. When it's halfway, they better have it in. But I don't want, if you give people till halfway, it's like I say, you give them an inch, they're going to take 2. So, right. I'm not saying that to be mean. That's just human nature. So, and the thing is, we can't really pin it on this. So I don't want it to really be a condition on this, because these guys have nothing to do with that. But I just want to get your collective as a planning commission here tonight saying that. Then I can pass that on, just saying, don't bring us number 4, 5, or 6 until this is done, because your probabilities of getting denied are going to go from 0 right now to 99% sure that you'll get denied if you don't address it up front. So I have no problem taking that to them, from you guys.
I don't think we should put any conditions on this, but I think, maybe even 5. We just sort of have to have that in the back of our mind that, okay,
I think we're going to have to
when we
remember
start getting 3 to 5, somewhere in there, we got to start thinking about it.
And I'm going to pass that on. Don't get to number 5. Let's, take care of it now.
Whatever's less than half, right? Not
But
starting out with less
supposedly
than
the
half.
first guy in and the next one and the next one and the next one, they're going to be paying common area maintenance fees for nothing that's there.
It's not even there yet.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yep. Well, is what it is, I guess.
This is Commissioner Anderson. My concern on this is actually, I mean, we're already talking about, traffic issues, and I know that with the conditional use, we have to see if it meets our city standards and so forth. So this does, but I would highly recommend that the developer and the applicant look at adding, right in, right out lanes here, and asking for a waiver on the landscape, width requirements there. And then I would suggest to city council that we look at amending this part of the code to start encouraging more right in, right out. Right now, we're encouraging traffic to become worse in the future at the expense of trying to have a few more plants, in the corners of some of these entrances. That's my big concern.
Thanks, Anderson. Anything else, commissioners, that you have on this item? Comments, questions, suggestions? If not, I'll look for a motion on this item if there's no further discussion.
So this is Commissioner Mitchell. I'm going to ask this question. I couldn't remember, but eventually the road that goes towards where the Washington City service area is, does that ever continue into, will the road pass through along the freeway at some point? So there would be an additional exit.
Yeah, I'm going to back out here and just put on the master plan road thing, and I think it'll answer your question.
Past the RV and then down.
Yeah.
I was just thinking about that as we were talking about trucks coming in and out. If eventually that would be an outlet.
This pink line you see, right here, can you see my arrow? Just kind of follow it. The blue meets up, but then it's going to go right through our city yard.
Okay.
And then tie into 300 East and come down to Telegraph.
Yeah. So eventually there'll be an additional.
Yes.
Yeah.
There will be passageway through, even all the way down, even this bluff view, this blue line is going to tie up there right now. You can still get through up there just coming down there. So you'll have 3 different ways coming in and out. I don't want semi trucks coming down to 300 East, to be honest with you. I'm probably fine with them if anything happens turning on Bluffview. But I don't really, I can live with that a little bit. I just don't want them going down 300 and right down to that light at Telegraph and 300 with the semi right there on that, that intersection. We've all been through it.
Yeah, a tough turn.
I'd rather them turn around, but that's true. Forgot about the donut. And then they're going to go through and get a drink, right, with their semi truck. So.
Commissioner Mitchell and I would have really liked that road to be in the 80s and 90s. It would have helped a lot with growing up.
Yeah, so does that help you? That goes all the way through there. So.
All right, I'll look for a motion when you're ready, commissioners.
I'll take a stab at it. I would move that, let me get to the right area here. That the Planning Commission approved C-22-19 allowing for a new motor vehicle sales agency to be located at approximately Washington Parkway and North Commerce Boulevard. With the 4 findings and the 10 conditions, and add I don't know if it would be a condition or a comment that the common area be completed by the time the 5th car dealership is under construction.
Did we need to add anything about the car wash, or is that just going to be discussed among? Okay.
So that's a comment that we'll add.
So the standard of review at the Planning Commission on conditional use permits is, does the proposal meet the city standards? And it does. That is the city standard. I've made notes. Staff will talk about that concept, and it's a pretty good one because we probably have a standard passed in the 90s when we came from the 70s and 80s when there wasn't zoning, there wasn't standards, and then in the 90s we imposed a standard. And one of those goals was beautification, requiring that developers, beautify. And maybe now that our next phase is kind of becoming congestive and busy, maybe we look at that standard and see if we can accomplish beautification, but also access and flow in a way that maybe wasn't even thought about in the 90s. And so that's how I take that feedback. I think it's really good feedback, especially from the land use body. And we'll wrestle with our law and see if the council wants to make some adjustments to that.
So can we add that as a comment also?
It's already been made as a comment. I would ask you not to add it as a condition on this vote. This one you should vote on up or down whether it meets the current city standards.
I have a motion by Commissioner Shield. Before there's a second, there's a comment that I have that I need to ask. I can't get it out of my brain, and it just keeps hitting me right in the forehead. Rusty, do you mind coming up for a second? I think this is for you. And I don't know exactly how to ask this. Again, I'm not trying to be offensive to Hyundai at all. If I was Bentley and I was considering coming here, and Hyundai is the development or the dealership that's going to be next to me, I'm wondering if this is a detractor. I don't want to be inconsiderate about this dealership because it looks great and everything, but the type of cars that I was expecting to get in here just as a citizen was higher end than this. And I'm wondering if this is possibly going to be a detractor from getting those others to come here. Does that make sense?
Yes, and this is I understand the concern, and this is a discussion that we've had with the Automall Group before, and there's a series of things that they have to do in order to get dealerships, and there's also a specific order that they strategically have put together this Automall in order to get the brands that they want. And again, they're restricted to the 15 brands with their SITLA agreement. And that's the expectation of the city too, because that's what this whole project was brought forward with. So the explanation that we've been given by the Automall is that this is a key component in getting the Genesis brand, which is a Hyundai brand. They've already purchased 2 acres. They haven't submitted plans. They haven't engaged yet. We don't know if the deal is done because there's a series of things. They have to get points. They have to work with the manufacturer. There are some things that have delayed this project somewhat, one being the chip shortage. And that has a ripple effect, just like the supply chain. So existing dealerships have some priority, but if they can get enough points in place, then they can open these dealerships. So the fact that new dealerships are opening when there are currently existing dealerships in other areas of the country that are still back ordered on some vehicles is I think a positive towards this project. And I will note also that the city council, although this wasn't brought before the planning commission, the city council did approve a public infrastructure district for it's 100% commercial for the Automall. So that horizontal infrastructure is underway. Their final set of plans was reviewed or has been reviewed and approved by the city. And so they plan to build out the lots, but they do want some flexibility. They're bound by where the electrical infrastructure will be in. And in this case, once a dealership has secured a lot size, then that locks in the access for the south side of the road. So some of those things, I don't think that we should have had the engineer at the preliminary plat to answer some of those technical questions. And at that time, staff had some questions as well, but those have all been addressed, and we're feeling a lot more comfortable about this project, including the financing side of it and the build out of the full Automall. So they do have a financing mechanism which which puts an ad valorem tax on those dealerships that they've agreed to. Finley agreed to it before they came in. So we've seen all those contracts. So we're feeling good about this.
So if I understand correctly what you've told me twice now, and I just want to make sure I understand it, that this auto mall is limited only to those that have been mentioned. We've seen in the press or that can come here, and that's it.
Right, the 15 brands, which Finley Hyundai was one of the 15 brands.
Yeah, I remember seeing Genesis on there. Okay.
Well, all these car dealers are just like Trader Joe's or Sprouts or anybody. They're looking at demographics. Has to work for them. And so is it really going to work for a Maserati? I doubt it.
Right.
It'll work for a Hyundai or whatever.
Well, when I see that list, that's exactly what I say. Who's going to want to put a Bentley dealership here if you sell 2 cars a year or whatever it is? So what I keep thinking about is
they're salesmen. So they're, the people that brought this to us are salesmen, and they're just doing their job to get in, to put in an auto mall.
Am I the only one that sees this as a concern that 10 years from now we have one dealership standing there and the rest of them aren't there?
It could be. But I don't think so either. I think it'll come. It's going to take some time, but this will kickstart it anyway.
So this Commissioner Mitchell, and I wasn't here during the original presentation of whatever went, so I don't have that list. But that was my simple question too, I guess, is can they come in and sell you that, hey, we're going to put a Ferrari and a Lamborghini dealership here, but to sell the deal, but then come in and put
That's what I feel is happening.
whatever they want,
If I would, the list that I saw,
I don't think we can.
control it.
Yeah, I don't think we need to worry about that. I mean, that was a sales pitch. It makes everybody excited, but I think an auto mall is a good idea.
So there is another element to this. The sales pitch has always been words like high-end, high-line type of words from automobile sellers today, people that are in the business right now. It also has always said we've already got a sale or pre-sale to Hyundai. So we've known from the city that both of those, I guess it's another H word, high-end, high-line, Hyundai, right? I look at it a little differently. Sales taxes on cars, sales taxes follow the residence of the buyer. So if we ended up stacking, 1,000 Porsches and 1,000 whatever, and sold those to people that live in wealthy neighborhoods that buy it and leave our town, those sales taxes follow. If we sell it to a bunch of Hyundais and Toyotas and Chevys and Fords to people that live here, that sales tax stays in our city and in our state. And so I think that we want it. That doesn't mean we're willing to reduce our standard, but the sale of Hyundais at that location will be good for our city, even though they're not what they sold us on.
no, I 100% agree with that.
Yeah. But it's
Afraid
not what
there's
they,
going to be
those
one
aren't,
dealership there that's sitting there.
aren't the words that they use.
I feel like we had a sales pitch, if you will, like kind of what you were saying. Man, I don't know how to say this without, like, I'm not trying to be offensive, but if I look at the list of dealerships that were coming, I would think that Genesis would be at the bottom of that list in my mind with regards to what cars. So we start at the bottom and working to the top. My concern is we never get to the top. That just seeing the list, I was floored. Who's going to buy a Maserati? Who's going to buy a Bentley here? I'm sure there's some, whatever. But that's all. It keeps coming up, and I can't just forget about it. And I don't know. Just wanted to see what you guys thought. Because we can if we say no, then they simply can't do it. I do understand and like the concept of having an auto mall there. I believe it should be there. It's perfect. I'm just wondering about the first foot out of the gate. This is what we're looking at. That's all.
So part of this too is the landowner is Sitla, and so they went through a competitive bid with Sitla on the property as well, and then they were bound by these restrictions and they won. Ultimately, it was competitive, which is why they're bound by that. So the infrastructure that they put in benefits the city and it benefits the landowner. But until they actually sell to dealerships, that's their risk.
Okay.
So that's the type of risk that they're taking as well.
And ultimately, I mean, it's not, I mean, our job here is to see if this conditional use meets city standards, and that's what we're voting on. It's not our job to decide if Sitla is being smart about their business decisions to sell the land. I mean, Sitla, you know, they're selling state land to fund education in Utah, and their mandate is to do the best job to get a good price on land, and that's their job. Our job is to say, does this meet the city standards, yes or no? So I don't think it's even our call. I don't even, doesn't bother me at all.
All right.
It doesn't bother me, but they're dealing with a developer. The developer's already made the deal with Sitla, so yeah, it's down that road. So
I just want to go on record. I feel like I feel I'm gonna be dead right. So I hope I'm wrong. I really do. Obviously, this could be a great thing for the city, and I welcome that. But again, it goes back to, I think, when I saw the list initially of what was coming, I kind of was like, oh, okay, is that really even going to work?
right,
And
I think we all had that feeling, but this is a kickstart.
I'd be disappointed if this is what it looked like in 10 years. That's all, I guess, my point.
I will just put one other note too. They said Highline, high tech, so they're looking a lot at electric vehicles, and we did have some concerns about the infrastructure for that. They pre-ordered that a year in advance, so all the electrical infrastructure for those charging and all of that is in place and secured. So it looks to be like this is. I know it took a long time, because I think actually it was at a previous position when this was announced at the 2017 Economic Summit, and that was when they first had the conversation with Sitla, and that before that deal was. So again, that was an announcement that was really, really early. So we'll caution not to do that anymore at the city, to do that. So until we get things worked out a little better.
Awesome.
So do I strike my motion, or do we keep going
I'm
down that
happy
road?
to keep it. I was going to ask for clarification.
This is Commissioner Anderson. I'll second the motion.
There you go. All right. I have a motion by Commissioner Shield. I've got a Melody, do you remember what the motion is? Do we need to add to it, or are you clear with what it was?
I'm good. Did you hear that? I'm good.
We put you to sleep back there?
Almost.
All right. I've got a motion by Commissioner Shield, a second by Commissioner Anderson. We're going to go to individual voting, and on this, Pete is abstaining. So I'll go to Commissioner Mitchell.
Yay.
Commissioner Shield,
Aye.
Tupou,
Aye.
Anderson.
Aye.
I'm Hanson. I'm a nay. Motion passes, and we will send this to, no, we won't send this to. The conditional use permit has been accepted for item number 5A. Okay, we will move now to item number 6A. This is a continuation of a conditional use permit revocation for conditional use permit C-1-19, Epic Motors LLC, located at 515 West Buena Vista Boulevard. Presenting is Washington City Attorney Thad Sigmiller. And I'll turn the time over to you, Thad, for a report.
Thank you, Chairman. We've got Ethel here. So this was an original item for revocation of a conditional use permit. The commission was all you were all here on the last one. The commission provided some good detail as to what needed to be accomplished. And then a lot of hands, both from Ethel and her folks and other folks, have contributed to get to a result that I'm fairly proud of. It's my recommendation that the action to revoke the conditional use permit be denied. In other words, that you vote down the process that I started because they've complied with the conditions that you have set. There are pictures that Drew's brought up. Because of its location, I think most of you have probably driven by it and had a chance to take a look at it. But if you have any questions for me, I'd be happy to address those.
Could we talk about some kind of landscape there? It's pretty raw.
It is. The original conditional use permit asked for a ground, like gravel, basically, right? The original standard was not super high. One of the things we've discussed with the landowner is come and ask for a new or amended conditional use permit. Let's talk about expanding it onto the other lands. Let's talk about modernizing it. That hasn't been received yet. I don't know whether that will or won't. The effort that's been made is just to get this current one into compliance. I do think the standard on this one meets the land cover, the ground cover standard that was set by the commission when it was passed originally. But yeah, that was a 90s standard that I think we've grown a bit from that one as well. One of the wrinkles here that is challenging is there is raw land to the west that's owned by the same owner but isn't subject to the same conditions, not subject to the conditional use permit. And so we can't require, as a part of this permit, that he landscape the land the rest of the direction. We would love for them to expand or amend their conditional use permit, bring it in and have that conversation.
This is Commissioner Tupou, I have a question. What happens if everything shows up again after we vote to deny?
I changed the date on my letter. I go take new pictures and send it back. And then I would guess that the planning commission would maybe handle it a little differently than they did the first time.
Because I drove by about a week and a half ago and a bunch of that stuff was still there.
Yeah, it was. So the Connex, I met with the landlord on site. You'll remember I mentioned I didn't know what was inside of it. He opened it and let me see in there. It has nothing to do with the auto dealer. Well, none of the contents reflect to auto sales. They has everything to do with personal items owned by the owner of the land, but nothing to do with auto sales. You know, golf clubs from his childhood, that type of stuff, right? Just old things that humans hang on to probably longer than we should, but we do. It was that type of stuff. I'd call it personal storage, but nothing related to, you know, automobile sales storage. And he acknowledged the same. And so it took a while. That was hard because Connexes aren't easy to locate, to replace in this city or in this county. There's other cities that disallow them. And then it's just, you know, there's a lot of stuff in there that he kind of thought about and wanted to work.
And we disallow them there?
Drew's interpretation of our code is that they are currently disallowed. There's efforts to write an even more specific code that disallows them unless specifically permitted, but I don't know that I can think of a specific permit that we would allow. That maybe, I won't even give any ideas there, Drew. Any specific allowed connexes that you're aware of?
Not unless they come in and do those refurbished type, you know, I mean, things, but that's because they're adding upgraded, newer stuff, you know, that we would look at. An engineer would have to stand behind it and all that other stuff, and everything in it would be upgraded electrical and all that, you know, but you know what I'm talking about, where people are refurbishing and making them actual usable buildings and stuff. So we would consider that. So
we look at it as a component of the project. I am not unaware of the fact that I stand here and say this, and there's storage containers in our city. And so I'm not telling you that this standard has been aggressively enforced by the city. It's one area that our city has not been super aggressive about is code enforcement, and this is one of those codes. And so we've got good looking storage containers in our city, and we've got ugly ones out there. And we deal with them when they come up for other reasons. At this point, we aren't sending attorney letters to every storage container, but when they show up for another reason, we talk about it and try to take care of it.
This is Commissioner Bullock. So as far as the landscape goes, it does meet the conditional use permit that was issued in the 90s, to your interpretation.
So yeah, leave this picture, Drew, because that's a good example. I didn't get a surveyor to tell me exactly where the boundary line is, but that concrete is a new pad on land that was subject to the original conditional use permit. But right about where that utility pole is, heading west toward the sign, is off of the land. The original conditional use permit addressed the land to the west and said none of the automobile business should be stored over there, but it only required land, like surface landscaping on the lands that were subject to the permit. So it had this tenet of you can't store your business over there, but it didn't say you've got to landscape everything down there.
Does the same owner own the piece that the sign is on?
No, not that sign. He owns signs farther to the west. So this owner, the history here is there used to be what was the steakhouse? Too Lazy to Ranch, when Commissioner Mitchell and I were line dancing there. And then it's been through different variations. It's a church. This owner bought from the steakhouse this kind of section piece. And then he sold back some of it to the church for parking lot. And so he bought from the ranch steakhouse and he sold some back to the church for parking lot. That piece that Drew has highlighted is owned by an entirely separate owner, which has land out in the Zion area. And that's what that sign advertises. But if you follow to the left, that next sign is owned by this owner. And so this owner bought that after he bought land from the steakhouse 7 or 8 years later. And I don't know if it was a contact. This is really interesting city history. Short meeting, so I'm gonna expand a little bit. One of the original developers in Washington City's name was Frank Sullivan. He and his wife, Frank and Violet, just lived up there by Playa de la Rosita. The house is burned out and looks bad now, but it was one of the premier homes in our city in the 80s. That family donated the land that is now named after them, called Sullivan Park. And so I try to remember all the developers that we expect free parks out of them to see if they're at least up to the Sullivan standard. But the Sullivans did some developing throughout the city, and they had those remnants there. So this owner bought those remnants from the estate. But yeah, I want to give them public credit. Sullivan Park is a city asset because of them and their donation to the city.
The piece that has the first sign on it, the owners are out by Zion.
I didn't get to that history. So the steakhouse wanted to keep that sign. The owners that own out in Zion owned the steakhouse. So they wanted to be able to advertise their Zion building from the sign that their steakhouse had, but then they sold a portion for a car dealership, and so they intentionally retained that. Years go by and the steakhouse sells to the church, but the steakhouse kept their sign to advertise their Zion businesses.
So it's like 5 feet wide or something?
It's 10 feet wide.
So it's just enough for the sign.
Yep.
If I'm not mistaken, did those owners show up at the previous meeting? 'Cause there were
Those
some
owners
people-
showed up. Yeah, they had a representative here. They've stayed in contact with my office. They have not been aggressive or mean or vile or congratulatory, but they've made it clear that they were interested in what the city was doing. They received a copy of my letters. My letters went to the operator of the business, Ethel, the owner, and then that sign owner because of the adjacent proximity to the conditional use permit. I did not send one to the church. I've not tried really hard to chase them down, but they've had an opportunity to comment if they've wanted, and I think they've chosen to follow the Bible. And what does Nacho Libre say? Thou shalt not wrestle thy neighbor. I think that's the commandment the church has chosen to follow. Thou shalt not wrestle thy neighbor. It's a short meeting, Chairman. I hope you don't mind.
I love it.
This is,
Book, chapter, and verse.
my issue is we're on this lot with a mobile office. I'm against that. I think it has to be more permanent to really have a business. That's my thought. I look at some industrial parks around and they don't allow mobile offices. You have to build a building. And this is retail, and we're letting them do a mobile office.
You're not. The prior planning commission did. The prior planning commission for this conditional use permit asked them to move it to that location and make it affixed. And the city will not allow them to expand that because of its proximity under the power lines. And so that's basically all they're ever going to get. And so staff look at that and say, for that location, for the traffic issues and other utility issues, we support what the Planning Commission allowed in the 90s, and we're going to do our best to try and make it come to fruition. And that was a mobile office that's attached to the land.
The piece that the owner owns that's not subject to this, it's further west.
Yep.
Is it wide enough if he wanted to pave it and like put cars up for display so people could see it along the freeway that were cars that were for sale. Is it wide enough to do
Yeah,
something
can
like
you
that?
zoom out a little bit, Drew? It's my opinion that it's wide enough that he could put a, just kind of a travel lane adjacent to the interstate fence. And then he could either park cars parallel or even facing that road. He shared with me some feedback, and I think he could display quite a lot of cars that way.
Yeah.
I know that Ethel has had more than one time when vehicles have left the lane of travel and damaged their inventory. And so he was a little, Ethel didn't say this, but the owner was like, man, it works, but is it worth the insurance process? And so that was one of the concerns. The other question is the cost of kind of paving that, or even just maybe road basing it, gonna equate the benefit of putting a few more on display? And he knows that the invitation from the city is there to modernize this conditional use permit. He also is, he's not the youngest sapling in the forest. He's had some illness this winter, and some of my conversation with him has been more about compliance and helping things be ready to, pass to whoever has the next opportunity to manage them. And so I wouldn't call him a real energetic, enterprising entrepreneur. He's done well in his life. He's a successful businessman, but I don't know that he's driving around there every day trying to decide how to get any more dollars out of this at this point.
All right.
But my 2 cents, I think that's the best use for the rest of that property, is to turn it all that way and just have it as display of automobiles, just to run down that. There's nothing else you can do on that property. I've sat and tried to think of, but it would only be for display items. If this was a Lifetime store, it'd be great for just hanging out all their Lifetime stuff, but you can't put a building in it. It can only be stuff that can be moved around, but cars would be one of those things that you could put out there and have display. So
Good idea.
Did you put billboards on it?
No.
they're already there. You can't do any more than what's
Can't do
there.
more than what's there?
No, because you have to be so many feet apart.
There's distance requirements in city and state law. Just one idea, if they were to come back to modernize it, they could say, look, council, it's narrow. We ask that you relax the sidewalk and, so we ask you in exchange for us, bringing this and agreeing to things, ask you to not require sidewalk there, right? And as Drew mentioned, I think that the city could look at that and staff could support something like that. And staff could also say, yeah, this is a good use of this piece that we recognize is difficult to make a good use of. And so they've got the invitation. We hope that they will.
All right. Well, high five to Ethel. It looks good. You did
Ethel?
it. I don't know what you had to go through, but you got it done. So good for you. I see you brought your muscle today too. And that one.
I want to make one comment, another. We're stuck with the mobile office, which I understand that. I think though, and I don't know how you enforce it, but it needs to look like a car lot. It needs to look like an operating car lot with organization, with cars parked in organization. So how do we do that?
So some of what
Let's have a real business. Let's open up. Let's be proactive. Let's go get some customers. That's how you're going to get them. You're going to be organized. You're going to be clean. You're going to have them parked to where people can come in and look at them.
Yep.
So
Some of what my office and other staff have had conversations with the operator. A lot of our pictures show a car across the driveway at business hours, right? And I'm sure many of you have seen that. They said, it looks like you're closed. That's what the dealerships do when they close. We've got pictures as we've walked the display yard there of, a car with 2 flat tires isn't being tried to be sold very hard, right? And so we've had some of those conversations. We've received good answers from the operator, and it's much of what you heard at the last meeting. At some point, if it appears that they're not using their conditional use permit, there is room in our code to revoke on that basis as well. And so I would write them a letter. Looks like you're not operating or using your conditional use permit. You've got a hearing with the Planning Commission next month.
there are some conditions in yard areas, in industrial,
Yep.
that do not allow vehicles that are not licensed, that don't run, trailers that don't have tires. You can't store them there. And so I think this is a little bit more uptown, so they shouldn't have those type of things on their lot.
I call this the heavenly corner. It's really close to God right there. And so I agree with you. I think the legal mechanism would be to say we're revoking your permit because you're not using it. And that's the easiest legal justification to revoke a permit that's been vested is, look, we've got.
Well, we want her to make a living.
Yep. But if you're just storing old cars there, you don't want your city to be an old car storage either. And so there's the balance. But we've communicated those concerns. You know, Melody's here, and Melody's taken some personal role in helping with this as well. And I've seen Melody's emails that mention to the operator, your driveway needs to be open during business hours. Your tires need to look like that you're trying to sell the car, that type of stuff. And so staff's working with them. We've tried not to make that the focal point of this process. We've tried to look at the conditional use permit and the legal conditions that were passed by the prior planning commission. But we're trying to work on that one. Our law does allow us to revoke for non-use of the permit.
That's something your office has the ability to do without coming back through this process again?
Nope, I would send them a letter and then your body revokes. I don't get to revoke permits granted by the legislative or appointed bodies. Okay. I just get a threaten to revoke, and then get them to you.
This is Commissioner Anderson. I'm really glad that it has been cleaned up. I mean, I went by there like a week ago and it hadn't been cleaned up, and so I was worried we were going to come here today and have to, you know, have a different outcome here. But I'm really glad that it got cleaned up. I think we need to be really clear, though. I guess, and I'm speaking to Ethel here, but you know, we need to make sure that land that had the Connex and so forth doesn't fill up with junk again. You know, just like Commissioner Shield said, business needs to be conducted. That's what a conditional use permit is for, is to conduct business. It's not to store stuff, it's to conduct business. And I mean, I want Ethel to succeed here. I want her to sell, you know, all the cars that she can. But I also know that, I mean, if we're trying to be fair, we just barely, you know, passed a conditional use permit for a car lot, and it had very specific, you know, line stripe that said this is where display vehicles go, and this is where cars are being washed, and this is where cars are being serviced, and so forth. Now, granted, this is a lot smaller land. I get that, but you know, they had to hold to a much higher standard to get their conditional use permit just, you know, 15 minutes ago. And so we need to, and we really need to kind of apply a similar standard here. A conditional use permit is to operate a business, so, you know, and I agree with Commissioner Shield. I mean, it needs some organization to it. It needs some striping or something. It's got to be closer to the Hyundai dealership than, you know, a storage lot.
Yeah.
I mean, I personally, I think, I mean, Commissioner Hanson was worried about Hyundai being here instead of Ferrari, but I mean, I think that this is a much more concerning standard. Like, you know, if we're setting the standard for what a car dealership is, we need to really think about it a little bit.
Yeah, the reality is if this land was raw and came to us today asking for that car dealership and a conditional use permit, it would fail to meet even the driveway. We wouldn't even permit that access at that location, right? And so this is not today's applicant. This is an applicant from the 90s. And we're dealing with what was approved under the standards at that time. As I met with the landlord on site, I learned of many things. So one of his businesses is he's a landlord, and I learned that much of that was stored on there was just stuff from his other businesses that needed a place, right? And you know what? As long as we let him get away with it, it was good. But he had to take care of business for, you know, remnants of his other businesses that just came here because it was convenient. He's very much on notice that the city gets comments about his land because of where it sits. And he knows that we're watching it, and he knows that we can bring him back at any time if we need to have another review on this.
He's the one that needs to be here tonight.
I excused him tonight. He's got a cough and sounds like he shouldn't be in any public place. And so I told him I would personally let you know that I told him he's excused. He was willing to come. He's had COVID, and he sounds like he's had COVID. He's sick, and so I excused him. Told him I'd speak on his behalf to that point.
This is Commissioner Anderson, I guess I'll just say one more thing. I'm in favor of revoking the denial, and allowing her to continue with her conditional use permit. And I wish her the best. And I'm glad that we've got this resolution. But I would also say that if Harry's other land fills up with junk again, I'll be the first person to vote denial automatically, like no more questions about it. Same thing with the dealership here. If it's not apparent that business is being conducted and that it gets organized and looks better than this, I'm not even going to hesitate to say, revoke it and let's move on to something else. I think that this commission has really exercised a lot of thought and compassion, and really tried to go the extra mile to make sure this can work. But we need to see, we've seen progress in cleaning up, but now we need to see progress, in operating as a business. So.
Yeah, there's some interesting legal things with his other land, because he's not disallowed from making lawful use of it. And if there was a grandfathered use there, he would be entitled to continue that grandfathered use. Those signs, some of those signs that are there fall into that category. But it has no grandfathered use to storage of trash, has no grandfathered use to storage of vehicles, has no grandfathered use to metal containers. But if he just wanted to say, I'm going to protest, I'm going to drive there every day and eat my hamburger parked, perpendicular. If he did it for an hour and left, that's probably a use that he's allowed to use lawfully on that surface, because it's land that he owns. If he was trespassing, it would become unlawful, but he owns it, that would probably be a lawful use. But a permanent type use, there's not a lot of grandfathered use there. It appears to just be the natural, the stuff that grew back after it got graded, right? It's not necessarily natural state, but it's whatever's growing there naturally now is his grandfathered use, and whatever else that he does there that's lawful, he's welcome to. We would welcome applications to maybe expand and grow on that.
Thanks for your thoughts, guys. Anything over on this side tonight? Got to balance it out a little bit.
Ethel says I have talked too long.
Yeah, I'm still stuck on not
He
to
did
leave
say
it.
that.
I agree with Commissioner Anderson. I think it looks great. You've made a lot of great strides, Ethel, in getting this. We definitely want to see an upgraded view of your business. It would certainly help the city. It's certainly going to help you. You've been in this business. You know it better than I do for sure, but I think you know what you need to do. So looking forward to rooting you on and sharing with you. And Thad, we'll lean to your office to continue to monitor this and keep us apprised of things we need to know if it starts to get out of hand, because,
So I take my temperature from the council as to how aggressive they want to be on this one. As you remember, we had specific representatives say, what's going on, right? And we had prior council members and prior planning commission members also. And so this one had, even though the prior folks don't have, current authority, it's persuasive when they say, hey, I was on the commission that granted this, and it looks worse, looks like something we didn't allow. And so, if the council says, hire some deputies and start enforcing the code more aggressively, I will. Right now, we try to do it on what we call a complaint basis, which is somebody's noticed it, turns it in, and then we go try to follow up on it as well.
all right.
So if you decide to deny the revocation, it's back into status. There's no time period on conditional use permits. It's into its status. You've chosen not to revoke it at this time. And so, no, there wouldn't be a 6-month or a 1-year deal.
Okay.
If you would like my office to report to you in 6 months on it, I would be happy to. If you want a review, I would just take it at the staff level and we would calendar and then bring that back to you.
I think that's nice. If that's a good offer on the table, for sure. Take it. Well, look for a motion from somebody, again, if we would like this to continue operating as is, then we would be denying this as opposed to voting it for approval. And I'll look for a motion when somebody's ready.
Commissioner Anderson, I'll move to deny the continuation of a conditional use permit revocation for conditional use permit C-01-19, 7 Epic Motors LLC, located at 515 West Buena Vista Boulevard, with the condition that the city attorney's office reviews conditions of the conditional use permit every 6 months, at least for the next year, maybe review it 6 months and at 12 months.
Okay.
This is Commissioner Bullock, I'll second.
All right, I've got a motion by Commissioner Anderson. I've got a second by Commissioner Bullock. Individual voting, Shield.
I vote nay. I think it's a babysitting problem.
Bullock.
Aye.
Tupou.
Aye.
Anderson.
Aye.
I'm Hanson. I'm an aye as well. The motion has been denied. And Ethel, we wish you best of luck. All right.
Just because it's a double negative, Ethel, the motion to revoke has been denied. So the conditional use permit remains in legal force.
No, that's totally fine. Melody asked me to give her 10 minutes to get back to the office, so.
Not quite 10 minutes, but I'm back.
All right. That's everything that we've had for the agenda this evening. Commissioners, is there anything else that needs to be brought before this body or staff? Anything from you? No. I'll look for a motion to close the meeting this evening.
This is Commissioner Bullock, I make a motion we adjourn the public meeting.
Chill, I second.
All right. First and second to adjourn the meeting. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Meeting is adjourned. Thank you.